Hi, this is Dave. So today's podcast might make you a little uncomfortable. I'm going to be talking about one of the 25 most important lessons I've learned. Recently, one of my clients recommended that I compile a series of posts on the most important lessons I've learned over my 30-year career as a consultant, working with over 500 different organizations. And, after a bit of work, I developed a list of the 25 most important lessons I've learned, and this is one of them. And that's this. Most people would rather believe a comfortable lie than accept an uncomfortable truth. Wow, so we're getting into human nature here, but let me repeat that. Most people would rather believe a comfortable lie than accept an uncomfortable truth. And, of course, the question is, are you one of those? And now this sounds so harsh, and probably it is. It is, however, an observation that I have made and affirmed over and over again. So let me just share with you some examples coming from my work. Here's an example. In my work with B2B sales organizations, I have occasionally been involved in an exercise in which we calculate the net profit per customer. This is an arduous effort that requires allocation of all the company's internal cost to every customer on a fair and equitable basis. So, for example, the cost of the buildings, the executives, the advertising, and so on, they're all allocated to each customer. And then that customer is subtracted, that number, the total cost of all those things, is subtracted from the gross profit realized from that customer to yield a, quote, net profit per customer. So it's a net profit per customer. It's a great way to evaluate each customer and make decisions about your relationship with each. Okay. In one case, my client was a several $100 million supplier of one category of product to a selection of big box stores. The company served hundreds of stores, but those hundreds of stores were operated by 11 customers. And so when the exercise was completed, it revealed that only one of those 11 customers were profitable. The others were subsidized by the profitable account. I attended the board meeting when that report was presented. What did the board do with this incredible piece of information? Absolutely nothing. They tabled the report and refused to consider it. The consequences were just too great to actually embrace that truth and do something about it. For example, they had just built a 300,000 square foot warehouse. Any action that they would have taken would have reflected negatively on the decision to build that warehouse. So, there are people whose egos were invested in that decision. The consequences of accepting the truth were too great. Instead, they choose to intentionally engage in self-deception. While that may have been a dramatic business example of this truth, and again, the truth is that most people would rather not accept the truth if it's uncomfortable, it is only one of countless other examples I've encountered in my career. Here's another one. The owner of a small distribution company was approaching retirement and brought one of his children into the business to succeed him. And one of the salespeople had been with the company for 30 years, and the new second-generation owner suspected that salesperson had parlayed his longevity into a position where he was not accountable to anyone. The younger manager suspected that the salesperson was taking advantage of his longevity. And so the new manager installed a GPS tracker into the salesperson's company car and tracked his actions. And the GPS revealed that while the salesperson was claiming to be working his territory, he was spending 2 days a week at his cabin on the lake. Well, what did the retiring owner do? excused the whole thing, said maybe the salesperson needed more vacation time. He refused to accept the truth that the salesperson was taking unethical advantage of the owner, and instead chose to persist in a deception. The dynamics at play here are the same as the earlier corporate board example. Someone becomes so invested in what was a firm belief that when that belief is challenged, they refuse to face the consequences of the new reality and instead choose to remain in what has become an intentional self-deception. For the corporate board, it was a 300,000 square foot warehouse, and all the time money and corporate prestige on the line. For the retiring owner, it was his view of the employee as loyal and dedicated. He didn't want to mess with that view. The truth would mess with that view. That he was being deceived would eviscerate that perception that he had. Now, I've seen this scenario play out countless times in my consulting career. A belief becomes rooted into people's psyche. When a clearer view of the truth becomes apparent, they're so invested in a commitment to that earlier view that they intentionally continue in the self-deception rather than accept the new level of truth and the implications that come with it. Now, I wish that this were just a business phenomena, but alas, it seems to be a part of human nature manifesting in all sorts of aspects of our lives. The power of the status quo and our irrational grasping onto it is one of the most powerful forces in our lives. It operates in families as well as organizations. I've seen, for example, parents who believe their teenage and adult children can do no wrong and defend them in the face of overwhelming evidence to the contrary. In the Near East, I watched a 13-year-old servant girl being blamed for a theft that everyone knew she had not committed. But in that culture, the truth was not as important as the image of respectability within the family. And the child was beaten mercilessly. Everyone knew she didn't do it. But they had to hold on to the deception that she did. I've seen it in nonprofit organizations where the chief decision makers hold on to a spurious claim for impact and effectiveness because they have invested years of their career into a concept of minimal, if any, import. As always, the consequences of jettisoning the self-deception are too great. They've invested too many years in their career and education into the system and admit that the system is flawed. Probably the most sad expression of this thing is in religious beliefs. There are millions of people who hold on to religious belief because it's what their parents did, in spite of overwhelming evidence that indicates it's probably not the most defendable position. The list can go on and on. It's unfortunately one of the observations that I've made about human nature. People would rather remain in a comfortable lie than admit to an uncomfortable truth. We relish in self-deception. That's why this is one of the 25 most important lessons I've learned. Hey, will you do me a favor and refer this podcast to others? I'm sure you have friends and associates who would gain something from it. Just refer it to others, and if you'd like to subscribe, please subscribe to whatever system you're listening to it on. Okay, I'd appreciate it. Thank you. That's it. We're done. Bye-bye.